Lazar. I'm mostly making these series of tutorials for a few of my friends that I want to teach some front-end and back-end technologies, essentially junior level skill plus for both back-end and front-end. Essentially back-end means stuff that happens on a server or like the program or software that actually processes your information whenever you want to, for example, log in into Facebook or whatever. And then the front end as well, which is essentially just the browser app where you actually insert your details and interact with your app and whatnot. So those are both backend and front end, so I'm covering both topics, or it's commonly called as full stack. So I'm gonna be covering both of those topics for my friends that I want to teach some web development, but I'm posting it here on YouTube as it might be first useful for them to revert back to a video that we already done or a lesson, so they can go back and rewatch. It might be more helpful for them, but as well this is a lot of very useful array of topics covering a lot of very useful modern tools being used in web development that might be useful for a lot of other people that want to get into web development space. So you might be wondering, it must be very sunny inside my house since I'm wearing a cap. Just, I have no personality. I'm very basic looking, so, it's probably very boring to watch me doing these tutorials. This is just a little fling to give me some personality. So I finished high school, I finished economy, then I signed up for Faculty of Organizational Sciences, which is kind of a management and sort of IT management college, university, whatever you want to call it. After that, I pretty much, for a year and a half, tried to find myself like as a person. What do I really want to do in life? Do I want to really go with the route of business development that kind of my university was forwarding me towards, or do I want to do something else in life? It's a very hard decision, especially because in that time, as a lot of people, I was struggling and also financially and all that stuff. So the easiest way or the easiest path for me was to go into the business development, since I found a job in Sweden where I could have worked for I think 1,400 euros a month to do some business development stuff. That was a very tricky decision to make, and because I had to really understand and make a choice. Do I want to go the easy path and do business development that, I don't know, of course there's a lot of people who do that really well, and as any other job it's a very good skill, and so it might be very good for them, but then again it's sort of a type of a job where in 10 years time some young kid can come up in the space and just crush all of the older people there, because it's just, it's sales. It's, if new technologies come that older people don't understand, they can easily just, years and years of them working in the space might not be as useful down the line. It's not as a raw skill as web development is. So I had to make a decision to either go the easy path, or even though I was struggling at times with a lot of stuff like that, I had to make a decision whether to go to that hard path and then start learning and learning and learning. I didn't see any sunlight for a few months. I was really, when I have a very good discipline, so when I put my mind towards something, I either go full crazy on it or I don't do it at all. So essentially I decided to go to that harder path, because the important part is the web development, how I at least look at it, the programming, it's a very raw skill, There's no discrimination there. There's no one cares how you look. No one cares, who you are, where you came from. The only thing that it's important is how you work, your skill set. Are you proactive? Are you a really nice person to work with? There's a lot of those things that come together into making you a very decent and solid employee, or a partner, or whatever you want to do, or even an entrepreneur if you want to build some of your own apps and whatnot. So this is very important, and for me that was very key, because in my mind, as time is passing, you cannot know less than you knew yesterday. So at least day by day, at certain point of time, you'll know enough things to be very solid and useful and have a very solid skill that nobody can take away from you. So this is literally your skill. This is what you bring to the table and why you are very useful and can earn a lot of money if that's your motivation, or you can make a very cool things if that's another motivation of yours. So it's very, very versatile and cool skill to have. So my path so far in web development, so I started with a little bit of HTML, and we are going to go through all these topics in like follow-up videos. I started with a little bit of HTML and then some CSS, and again I was struggling so hard because all these technologies put together, when you essentially go through the entire stack of these technologies, then you realize it's not really that hard. You know, it's not, I don't know, it's not easy, but it's not also that hard at all. So my so far path in web development, and I'm in this space for less than 3 years now, since I started learning initially all the technologies. I had to do it all alone. Like I was really, really wanting to find anybody that can just give me a smidge of information, just any type of help to gain some perspective how these tools communicate with each other and what actually goes on, because that's the kind of the hardest hurdle to go through, which is what does happen in all of this. Like, how do things connect? What do I need to learn? How does this all connect to each other? How does it happen? And so on. Once you have a perspective of what you actually have to learn or what tools are actually required to building an app, then it's very easy, you know, I mean easy, but at least you know exactly where to look and you don't waste any time. You can go straight to the work, right? So I had no one. I was really like trying to find a friend that knew my friend that was my aunt's cousin or whatever. So I was really, really trying to find anybody from this field that can help me, and I didn't find anybody. And even online, it's very difficult because a lot of people are talking subjectively, as kind of I am as well in this case, from their own experience, like the learning path that they suggest you to take. A lot of those is a lot of stale information. It's a lot of technologies that they used to be efficient, they used to be quality, providing quality code, but today a lot of those things are outdated. So it was very, very hard. I couldn't really follow any of those learning paths that a lot of people were giving out as suggestions. So I basically had to like filter all the possible tools and whole lot of stuff out there regarding HTML, CSS, JavaScript, different frameworks, so many things, which is kind of very hard, you know, because I had to basically filter through everything so I can distill it down to something actually useful and something that I can do in my day-to-day job, and something that was my initial motivation, that's something that can help me land a first job, right? Because that's another problem. I didn't know what goes on in companies, like the thing that you need to learn, what do we need to do in that job, you know, what happens there. So I had no clue about any of that stuff, and there was nobody to give me any kind of perspective what to do and how to handle myself during learning process for all of that. So as I said, I started with HTML and then some CSS, and then as I was really crazy, you know, when I get into stuff, I really go deep into a lot of stuff. I essentially, in order to learn all the CSS properties, which is not a good mentality, but of course I didn't know that at the time. So I basically made an Excel sheet, and then I documented basically all this majority of the CSS properties and values that I can use to style HTML in order to somehow, you know, retain it all in my memory, like everything in CSS. But I didn't know, like that was my effort I was making in order to, I don't know, motivate myself. Okay, I'm having some progress, I know all of this stuff, so good. Because in this learning process, people have a lot of, like, I call it like mini depressions, you know, because you do some stuff and then you hit a wall, and then you go over that wall because you find a solution, and then tomorrow you hit like 50 more walls. And you know, it's just hard. You just have to stick with it, you know. You just have to stick with it, go over those hurdles and continue. And that was my kind of perspective at the time, even though I was like oblivious, I had no clue what's happening. where I'm going. Do I know anything useful still? I had no clue. Time was passing. It's very doubtful period for me and like for anybody learning these things. So my logic was, as time is passing and as I learn more and more stuff, it's just a question of time when I will know enough to be useful for any kind of first junior job. So I learned that, and for a while I was really afraid of JavaScript for some reason. It's a browser. Essentially, JavaScript is a browser programming language, and HTML and CSS are basically Markdown and style languages in the browser for the browser apps. And it's not really programming, it's just like basic Markdown and stuff you can do, but it's not dynamic. There's no programming, there's nothing dynamically really happening there. And JavaScript is the programming language of the browser, so that's what you use to build the front-end apps and the back-end apps as well. So that I was very afraid, like, because a lot of for a while I was really doubting myself, because I never came from this sort of industry, from this sort of field. Nobody around me does any sort of thing similar to programming, so I was really like doubting myself. Usually, in the space around us, like our community, socially, there's like that sort of stigma that a lot of programmers are like super mathematical, like very intelligent kind of people, which I'm not saying they are not. There are a lot of very smart people, and there's bunch of programming industries, or I mean sorts of the markets where that's math is used a lot, especially in machine learning and AI and so on. But in a lot of web development cases, that's not a case. There's no math involved or some super crazy algorithms and so on. So especially in the beginning, of course, over time, a lot of stuff can be useful and you can do a lot of new stuff, and also machine learning and that kind of stuff. But initially, that's not a case. But I didn't know. I had no perspective essentially. What goes on, what I need to know, and am I good enough for this? So I was doubting myself all the time, and it kind of developed a fear inside of me regarding JavaScript. So I was like literally afraid for months. I didn't write one single JavaScript line of code because I was like, oh man, this is so hard potential. I didn't know it was hard. I didn't even Google it. I was afraid. And then one day I'm like, damn it, like I'm gonna sit down, I'm gonna try to do some JavaScript. And immediately, the first thing I've done is I made a game. Like, don't ask how, but I made a game. The Flappy Bird game where you click like space and a small bird jumps over obstacles and until you go out of time or you hit a wall. So that was the first JavaScript thing I made. It's basically just a front-end app. Like, it refreshes like 60 times a second. It calculates where my bird is. Did I click above? Should I move it a little bit above? Or did I hit a wall? Was there like a connection there? Should I lose the game and stuff like this? So it sounds very complicated, but it's not that necessarily complicated. But that was the first thing I made. And then the second thing I made is, the card, the remembering game, when you have like a bunch of cards that are turned around, like you can see only their back side, and then you click open one, and you need to like remember where the pairs are until you like open all of them successfully. So that was like the second thing I made in JavaScript. Then some time passed, and I started learning Angular, which is a framework for building web applications. Because you're not gonna, in most cases, build like a complex web application that has like a login page, a dashboard pages, and so on, and a bunch of things are happening there in like basic HTML and JavaScript. That would be very messy code base. It wouldn't be as useful as using some of those frameworks that help you like basically like few lines of code make like very dynamic pages and so on. So they are very useful, but the first one I learned was Angular. And essentially Angular is a Google framework for building front-end apps, and it's very intense. Like that was like that was the first framework or programming like kind of framework that I learned. And it was very intense to learn, which is kind of good because I really gained a lot of strength. I gained a lot of perseverance during that process because it's so hard, but I had to learn. There's a lot of details going on. It's kind of complicated, and we're not going to go over Angular here in this course because I really personally don't consider it being a good framework compared to React. In some use cases, don't get me wrong, in some use cases, of course, Angular is good. Some people like them. if it does a job for you or some of your project, and it gives you money for it, by all means, it's a good framework for you to use. But for me, for building a lot of complicated apps, I can do with a lot less code. I can build very super complicated and really quality apps in React compared to Angular. So that's why I like React. React is also a front-end framework developed by Facebook and also used by Facebook in production, which is a very crucial detail which we are going to come to here in the later course. Then essentially after that, the first company I worked for is over isec.org. It's a student organization that are connecting students and companies across the world doing a bunch of very cool projects. So it's a really awesome organization. You can check it out. You can apply for a bunch of internships through them. And I was like, heck with it. Like, I'm going to try. I think I know enough now to at least land a first job. So essentially, I applied for a job in Estonia. And everybody tries to give you advice, or there's a lot of advice out there on how to apply for a first job and what to actually do. And for me, I try to think like logically, business-wise, how do you, express yourself well, and how do you put yourself out there to that employer so you are kind of out of the bunch, they can notice you out of like 100 other people that are also applying for the same thing. So, and then I put myself in their shoes and I thought like, man, I would really love if I had like a proactive person, somebody I don't have to tell much, yet they do their job. Plus, not even the job, we didn't even agree, they do some stuff on top of that. So they are proactive, they bring a lot of value, even if they are not asked to. That means that person cares. That person is proactive, it's somebody you can rely on, and it's very important. Like, that's the key thing, because even though if somebody knows more than you, but they're kind of lazy to learn new things or be more proactive, essentially you who know less at the moment, you can progress much more exponentially than that other person and be much more useful and provide a lot bigger value than other person. So that was like my key edge, because there's nothing else I bring to the table other than the things I just learned. Angular and also Django, I learned like a framework for building servers in Python. And it's a really cool framework as well for beginners, which we are again not going to cover. We're going to cover Node.js. It's a JavaScript language for building server apps. So essentially, I brought some knowledge as a junior, but I needed some edge. I needed something to really pull me through all those lines of people that really also applied for that same position, same internship. So essentially, I kind of researched what the company does, and it was in a crypto space, so it's kind of also difficult for me to understand, especially as a newcomer to JavaScript and front end. So what I've done is I immediately built a small server, and I built a front-end app that where they can save something there, like it's like a mini dashboard related to something they do. I didn't really know what they did, but like something in along the lines of what I thought they do, but just by researching their website. And immediately before my first interview, I sent that project to them and I said, guys, I did this for you. I even made them like a custom logo or something just quickly. So I really put a lot of effort even before my first interview. So what does that tell you? Like, people send like motivation letters, they send like bunch of CVs, and it's all like full of kind of experiences and stuff, whatever. But that's all theory. That's all. You're just writing some stuff which can be true, maybe it's not true, maybe just over exaggerated, whatever. But what I brought to the table is immediately, I didn't need a motivation letter, I didn't need a crazy CV, right? I immediately sent like proof of my work and proof of my proactiveness and proof that I care. And if you have people that actually care and are proactive in your company, what else do you want? Like, what else do you want in employee? And essentially, basically, that entire interview was, oh man, whatever, you're great. And then, essentially, like, just who am I? I'm from Serbia, la la la. We just had a small chat. They're like, what do you want to do for technology? I said, like, the first thing I learned, the only thing I know so far is Angular. I did a bit of Django, whatever. I didn't do much. I basically, that's like 1.5 months into learning Angular and all that stuff. I applied for the job, and he said like, okay, guy, okay, man, see ya later. And then like a day after, they immediately he gave me the job. So I don't know what you can take from that, but I think that's extremely important while applying for a job, which we will also cover after we go through all these tutorials, how you can maybe apply for a job, or what can you do to be that can be helpful for you to land a good job. And so I worked in that company for like 8 months in Estonia, and then I came back to Serbia. The CTO that from that company, first company, created his own company, and he invited me to be his lead engineer. And that's another cool story. This video is probably like half an hour long or more than that. I'm sorry. So I don't know, maybe these stories are interesting to you or not, but you can, speed up or whatever. So during that job, as I was a junior, and I kind of have that mentality. Every morning we had meetings, like a front-end team, bunch of us, a meeting every morning. We were just reviewing the tasks we had to do yesterday. Did we achieve them? Or were there any issues? What are the tasks we are going to do today? So it's called like a stand-up meeting. So each team, a CTO goes around and he has that morning meeting with each team, like front and back end and so on. So during my work time there, at one point we kind of merged both back end team and front end team in like one single meeting. So we were discussing everything that goes on in the technology, in the company and so on. And they were talking a lot about servers or APIs. Again, we are going to cover that in the later tutorial. So they were talking about a lot of that stuff. And of course, me as a junior, I shouldn't know all that stuff. Like it's not even expected from me to. I literally just began. Like there's so many things to learn. Nobody, of course, expects me to know that stuff. But I was kind of ashamed. Not ashamed. I don't know. But I felt kind of weird that I don't have any knowledge to understand what they are discussing in the first place, and to jump in and suggest something, not to be nosy, like, oh, me, no, but just to provide some useful, because I like to help. Like, I was kind of down because I didn't have enough knowledge or perspective to jump in the conversation and provide any useful, angle or perspective or some kind of help. So it was very kind of, for me, that was, I didn't like it. So that's the moment that pushed me, and I essentially worked weekends. Like everybody else is like having a nice time during weekends, going out, whatever, which I also did, like a Friday night, whatever. But during weekends, I was like pumping iron, like in terms of learning new stuff. And I really wanted to catch up to those seniors. Because of course, crazy seniors, the guys who work there for like 10, 15 years. So of course, they have a perspective and know all that stuff and those tools. But I kind of felt ashamed being on those meetings and not being able to contribute anything. So I really, hammered. I worked like few months non-stop during the week. After work, I kept learning stuff. I just wanted to catch up. And then at some point, I actually caught up with them in terms of the technology we are using in the company, and I actually started providing some suggestions, actually useful ones, and I felt so nice. Like I actually oh, finally, I'm one of you. I'm not a muggle, from Harry Potter. I'm not a muggle person. I actually feel now a part of the group, But that was my, personal motivation, something that pushed me. And I'm kind of, I like to challenge myself. I like to compete with people, but like personally, I don't like to be like competing, but be very annoying. No, I don't like that. But so just like personally in my own head, to be, to like to compete with people, and I like to catch impossible things. Like that was an impossible goal for me. That's why it was like really interesting to me. Like, can I catch up to these guys? Like at least to that level that I can talk to them like an actual developer. And that's what actually happened. So that was kind of my story so far. And then I continued working in that new company with that CDO where I was the lead engineer, and I continue work. And then this day, like not right now, I'm still working with him, and we made some really cool things. So I'm just want to like very quickly go through maybe some things I already made just to establish like my credentials here, like what I actually can do and contribute here in these tutorials. So I'm not, I know what I'm at least talking about at some level, at least some useful stuff. So basically my company does some stuff in the crypto space. In a way, it's essentially doing some notarization. So notarization is when you go and you have a document and there's like a legal person who can like also sign it and say, yes, you did that, I approve, and they basically stamp and say like this, I confirm, like I certify your information, so this is what happened, and there's no changing it, this is what it is. And this is very important for a lot of industries. So we are making kind of a digital version of this, a digital notarization using blockchain, the Bitcoin blockchain kind of terms, stuff you probably heard that around. It doesn't matter, essentially it's you write a small chunk of information once and you can never change it, like you can never update it. You initially wrote it, you can just read it to confirm it down the road, but you can never change it. So essentially it's like you are making an exchange with somebody in the e-commerce space or whatever. You pay them, they sent you the goods, they sent you a receipt, that's what happened, and then we can notarize that. And if somebody wants to go back later on and like change something and say, no, you didn't pay, we didn't send you a receipt, we don't want to send you anything, you didn't pay. No, there's actual proof. Like you can go to the blockchain, we save the proof of them buying something, like actually making a transaction, so you can completely prove something like 100 years in the future, which is very, very useful for a lot of industries. Anyways, so I built like a lot of technology. I'm not gonna get into all of them. I'm gonna just show you maybe 3 of them. So it's like a dashboard app where you can manage all your assets, or like I made like an organization system, so you can sign up, get an organization, you can like manage your staff, like bunch of accounts in your organization, you have analytics, you have like free premium plans, you can subscribe to a bigger plan and pay like a subscription for getting a lot more value out of this entire organization, and so on. So essentially I'm gonna just really quickly show you some stuff. I don't know, there's a bunch of stuff. This is React. There's some analytics in this organization. How many assets you created a month? What are assets? It doesn't matter. This is just just very quickly going through stuff. I also made a marketplace where you can actually install certain apps that can help you do it, like plugins. So I actually made an entire like plugin system where you can even, some of these apps are paid, some of them are private, you can install them and they can help you with certain things. For example, track and trace, this is like integration in our system where the IoT device is sending, like in a truck that's moving a bunch of goods, it's sending like every certain interval of time, temperature, humidity, light and shock values that those sensors are like basically pinging towards us all the time. And the guys can set alarm zones when if the shock or the temperature is below a certain level or above, it triggers an alarm and it's sent to our system, and our system realizes, oh shit, something happened, and immediately alerts the person who is responsible for this route that the truck is moving some goods from one point to another. And this is really good. So basically here it's an integrated app where you can generate all these things and you see at any point in time what was the temperature, you can see the spikes, the humidity, and we generate like a PDF report for all of this stuff and what was the max, minimum temperature, humidity, whatever. For example, shock. Imagine transporting something very fragile and then something in the truck just jumps and breaks a bunch of plates inside, and we would see the spike in the shock inside of the truck and it would immediately alert people like in real time, which is very cool. This is just a smidge of like a small thing that we are doing in this system that I've built. Like a very, very small percentage of what I've built here. So there's a lot of very complicated stuff, but also very useful stuff. There's also like, I don't know, this is one of the apps, so this is the dashboard that companies are using, and then what I'm showing you now is like a consumer app that anybody can scan a QR code, go here, and this is, for example, a batch, and this batch, like, when you create a bunch of Coca-Cola bottles, they are all wrapped into a batch, so that batch contains like 100 bottles of Coca-Cola, right? And it has its unique identifier and so on. So essentially, I'm not gonna go into too much details. This is like a integrated app, and you see these colors, so I made it customizable so companies can use their own branding, custom branding to to apply to this page. So all of this typography is not default one. This is, they set their own custom colors and fonts, and it's applied for this specific organization, but only for an organization that has a premium plan. So it's everything is very dynamic and very conditional, like what plans do they have, this is what they will get as features in our apps and so on. And basically this, what you see here, there's a timeline of events that happen and were attached to this this badge, for example, this badge item, whatever. And badge created is an event then that has a couple of assets that were created, and you can see all the assets like bottles. These assets are like, this is like a bottle of Coca-Cola, another bottle of Coca-Cola, whatever. So these were created in this location, and this is where the batch was made. So we have all that information, and you keep track of all of it. And nobody can go later and change and say, no, it was not in this location, yet it is in another, when inspection comes. No, the initial details that were put in our system are notarized, saved in blockchain, and it says this is certified. So this data wasn't meddled with, wasn't changed. So there is a bunch of really cool technologies here. I made a bunch of stuff, and this is kind of just a part of like the things I've done. I like my credentials per se. That was a bit about me, what I do and what I've done so far. Now regarding everything that is gonna happen moving forwards with these tutorials and everything we're gonna give you guys. So just a small disclaimer, going into this field, like I was very afraid, as I said already, like I had no clue what's going on. I didn't know day by day, even if like as time is passing, if I'm still doing anything remotely useful for my first job, and because there was nobody that can give me any kind of perspective on any help of any sorts. So, and again, I was thinking like, oh, there's so many details here in the programming like world, in web development, like smart enough to do any of this work. And that's not the case. Like it's just work like any other, like same as learning English. Initially it's hard because you are going through those initial stages. As soon as you have remotely some useful knowledge in English, or you repeated the same word or the same sentence like 1 million times already, it's gonna go into your muscle memory. So you're gonna stop thinking about how do I connect the sentence, how do I connect the words into a useful sentence, something that makes sense or something that sounds well. You're gonna stop thinking in those terms, and you're gonna start thinking, because that's now in your muscle memory, and then now your brain opens up to think about next more advanced things and so on. So it's like work, and basically then you start thinking in English and not your native language. Same as I'm like, when I'm thinking about the code, at this point I'm not thinking about what syntax do I use, how do I code this, how do I write this thing. I actually, no, this is all in my muscle memory now. It's not that hard at the end of the day as well, but it's in my muscle memory, so I don't really have to think about it. I basically just, I genuinely think in terms of code. Like I don't think in my native language or anything. I just, I just think in terms of what has to happen in the code, basically only that. And the way I'm actually typing it or doing whatever code I'm writing, it just happens like I'm typing, on Facebook to my friend in Messenger or whatever, like in my native language or English, whatever. Just flows, just happens. Because at that point it's in my muscle memory. It's like language, like any other language you would learn in your life. So it's not really that hard. It just takes some patience and takes somebody to at least push you a bit or give you some perspective on how to use these tools, what to use, and what's kind of useful, which is what we are going to do in follow-up videos to this one, in array of tutorials I'm going to do. So, as I said, I'm Lazar, but then again you saw the coolpage.com, so you're wondering, like, what is this and what is this GitHub? Like, this is where I'm going to post all my code. So all the code I'm doing, that's going to be referenced to each reference to each of the lessons, and I'm gonna do some coding challenges and tasks with the solutions as well attached, so you can practice right after the lessons. So all that code will be here in my cool page. This is, you're probably thinking like, I'm Lazar, what is this cool page? This is not my first name. Although my parents did consider naming me coolpage.com, but that was kind of, everybody was named that here, so no, but it wasn't really cool. No, that was such a dumb joke. No, so basically, this is my company, and company here in Serbia. I'm like a single, at the moment, I'm like one-man band. But anyways, here is where I'm gonna post all the code, all the projects that I'm gonna give you as tasks to do, and then also all the solutions for them, so you can download everything from here. And we are gonna go over what is really GitHub and how is it useful for programming and all that stuff. So don't worry. So again, very quickly, I'm gonna finish real soon. Sorry, this took like forever, this entire video, but I hope it's a smidge useful and maybe interesting to listen to all these stories somewhat. I don't know, maybe. So because this is a lot of information, like there's this front end, you build some apps in the browser, then you build some servers, then you have a database where you're actually saving stuff and reading stuff from. You're actually, it's, when you look at it as a whole system, it looks very scary, and it looks very, how are you gonna learn all of that? So don't think in those terms. It's really, divide and conquer saying. So it's basically, we have an array of technologies. We are gonna do each one very simply, and then we are gonna build in future video like an entire blog app that actually will build a dashboard where you can write some posts. You send that to our server, we save that into our database, and then we'll have another app in Next.js where you go to like a blog / some blog ID or blog name, whatever URL, and it loads our blog post. You see a title, description, some tags, whatever. So basically we're gonna build all of that, but we are gonna do it one tool at a time. Each tool individually is not necessarily hard. It's relatively easy once you get into it. There's not much to it really. And then at the end, once we cover each technology, each tool individually, it will all connect to a very cool thing. So you're gonna be like, oh, shirt, I know a lot of really awesome tools, and it connected into a really cool skill at the end. So just don't worry about it. Don't think ahead. Don't think of this like as a huge thing to learn all of those things at the same time. Forget about it. Just think in terms of like a moment of a current tool we are doing. Just relax. It's not that hard. Like, it's not gonna be that hard once we go over everything. It's not nuclear physics. It's not something that, even though you're like 15 years in a job, it's still very difficult to do some things. No, this is like, once we go through some tools and you see how it all works, that's it. Like, basically then you can just extend from there and do more use cases, build more different apps, and it just goes from there. And that's the thing, like doing that initial stuff for a junior level skill, we are gonna go through that very smoothly. So really relax. It's not that crazy. You're good. Like, I'm gonna cover most like used technologies currently in the market, something that's really modern, really in use by a lot of people. And again, it's my personal take. I'm not saying anything else other than that is bad, or people that do some other stuff. No, everybody does something that make them productive, or maybe maybe their company has a lot of people that are used to Angular, so it would take a lot of time for all of them to learn React just for the sake of using React, because it's maybe objectively better or not, but it doesn't matter. They have more value of using Angular in their team for a productive sake, because that's what they do at the moment. That's what brings them money, and it's cool. Like, this is all business at the end of the day. Like, any tool that does the job you currently are doing and it makes sense for you, great, by all means, go full for it. Just the tools I'm using that I also think are objectively better. Again, I think subjectively that the tools are objectively better, but again, it's my opinion. I have a lot of reasons. We are gonna go into that. So basically, I'm gonna teach you those tools, and they are kind of, in a way, simpler than Angular. React is simpler than Angular in a lot of ways. And yeah, so basically it's gonna be an easier learning path for you with these tutorials that are coming after this video. And again, it's a very simple philosophy. Just think of terms that, okay, we are gonna do the tutorial, you're gonna write it once, then we are gonna go back, rewrite it again, do the same task again until it, goes into, it start becoming very familiar to you. And at that point, you already, wrapped your head around what's happening, all the tools, how they are working, talking to each other, and so on. And once, for example, I have my own like code bases for a front end that I kind of, over almost 3 years of time, all my knowledge, all the complexity I've built, I kind of distilled down to like a code base that's very scalable and very reusable and efficient, and very clean code that anybody can come into and use or extend from. So I basically reuse that code starting new projects. So I'm not gonna start everything from scratch every time. So essentially just think of it in terms of that. Even so, I'm gonna give you my own code that I've done for a while and like built for a while. So I'm gonna give you a lot of that code that you can use for free anytime you want. So just for the moment, you don't need to understand every single thing that's going on. You just need to understand this is the tool, this is what this tool does, and this is how I use the tool. And then later, once that becomes very familiar to you and it doesn't hurt your brain anymore, then you can go into details and say, okay, so this part of the tool is that, what is that, how does it work, how does it contribute to this code base, and so on. So do not go into too many details now. We just need to learn how to use a shovel for now to dig up some dirt. That's it. We don't need to know how the shovel is made right now. So we need to go very simple steps. You go into this space later down, we can go into more details, essentially. That's pretty much it. I'm gonna teach you a lot of really cool stuff going forwards. Just stay calm. It's gonna be fine. Stop panicking. It's not that crazy. We're gonna go step by step. I'm gonna give you some tasks and also solutions accompanying each tutorial again. You're gonna have all my code out there. You can always ask in the comments, or if you're one of these guys who I'm gonna teach, we have a group, we can always have a chat. Don't worry about it if you get stuck. And you're gonna get stuck in doing the code many times, and you're gonna think I'm super stupid and dumb, in a lot of moments, which I also did. But you go over that, like that goes, like time passes, you figure stuff out, you move on. You just need to give it time, like just have to be super patient. And it's fine, it's gonna be fine. After a while, you're gonna know enough and you are gonna do enough things that all of a sudden you're actually becoming a developer. Now you know how to think in terms of code, how things connect to each other, how they work, and it's gonna be fun. You're gonna get a fair job, you're gonna get some rewards for it, salary, whatever, and it's gonna go on from there. So it's gonna be fine. It's not that hard. We are gonna go through it together, and yeah, see you in the next video.